was shot apparently 8 times, mostly in the back. And a lot of people are outraged over the shooting because this is, sort of in alignment with all the shootings of black men that have happened or that have appeared in the media in recent years, recent months. Now you came to me though with this really interesting, crazy twist that I didn't know about. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, this story really hit home because I actually live about 45 minutes from Sacramento. It's like I'm in the Bay Area, but Sacramento is like a second form of the Bay Area, if you will. And to see how it all has transpired, I initially was supporting him. Other Black women were outraged. Other Black people were outraged. But then I was doing a live video on my channel, and then people were in my comments just like, Paris, you need to talk about this. You need to talk about this. Like, Stephon said this stuff about Black women. I'm like, what are you guys talking about? So I go to search his name plus, Stephon Clark plus tweets. And then I just see all these tweets of him saying, I don't want nothing Black but an Xbox. Dark bees bring dark days. And he made that as a response to somebody that simply said, Black is beautiful. And he constantly, even after he made that one comment, I think it was maybe in May of 2015 where he said that, then he repeated it again in October. So, he was really making it known that, I don't support dark-skinned women, but that's not really what got me. So then if you keep looking at the tweets, then his girlfriend, starts to chime in and she says this N-word said, his girlfriend is Vietnamese or Asian. And she says, this N-word said, I don't want no Black baby. I'm already Black. I don't need no Black baby. And he co-signed this and he said, on God, 100.
Interesting. Okay, so now is this his Twitter account? Allegedly the one that says Zoe Woods, ZOEWOODZ. Is that?
Yes.
Okay. And I'm looking at this, and this is he's like, we don't want to. This is not to disparage, a man who was just killed, or to make light of what's going on with police shootings, but I think anybody who respects Black women is going to have some concern about this, because it speaks to this whole idea of how do you feel lining up in support of a brother who clearly, based on what these tweets are saying, if this is accurate, he would never line up and support you, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's kind of a challenge. So Paris, let me ask you this: you're a young Black woman, and I'm sure you were taken aback by what you saw. How did you feel, when you were reading, some of these quotes and tweets?
Well, I felt stupid because I already get a lot of backlash from Black women who date interracially and white racist and things like that. And they're telling me you shouldn't support these men and these men hate you and they are leaving you and you all are single mothers and you're a handmaiden and a pick-me and all this stuff. And I'm getting all this for supporting these men. And again, it doesn't take away from the fact that there are Black men who support and love Black women who get shot by the police every day. But it does kind of speak volumes that Black women sometimes, and this isn't all the time, but sometimes it's like the love and support that we have for men like Stephon is not reciprocated. And these men keep, showing us they don't support us. They don't care about us. Our lives are not valued to them. But there's Black women out here, for example, like with him, a Black woman was out there protesting for him in March and she got hit by a cop and he ran off. Now, I hope she made it. I'm not sure if she's alive or not. But even his dark-skinned Black grandmother, he's living in her house. But, you want to say that you don't want Black women. We bring dark days, but you were living in her house. So how do you say that? And me as a Black woman, I feel like if I support him, then I am in a way condoning his colorism and the racism that his girlfriend was spewing towards Black women and his erasure of his own race, where he clearly stated, my babies are Vietnamese and Indian. So do their lives not matter? Young lives matter. And it's just like, wow, like how could you, as a Black man, know what's going on with Mike Brown, all these other different Black men who have been shot unjustifiably by police. And you thought because you have an Asian girlfriend and you have to cape for her, that by somehow, distancing yourself from your Blackness was going to make you immune. Now, I'm not saying it's karma for what happened to him, but I just think that he was so ignorant to how society views him and how much of a danger his skin color made him in America.
Everybody, in case you just jumped in, we're having a serious conversation about Stephon Clark, excuse me, the man who was shot by the police 8 times. And Paris Milan brought it to my attention that that there was a reason for concern for a lot of Black women who are disappointed in some of the things that Stephon and his girlfriend, Selena Manny, who happens to be Asian. I guess she's not just a girlfriend; she's the mother of his 2 kids. Said about Black women allegedly on Twitter. Now, let me ask you this. Now, I'm gonna tell you this. I'm looking at the comments over here at the on Facebook, and Nicole Price, who's a brilliant lady I respect, she says that it's about the systematic problem, not this one case. But also, I have some other people who are not so nice. Nicole is very intelligent and respectful, but some people in here saying, "Boyce, you're not helping. Boyce, this is bad. Boyce, you need to shut the fuck up. Just shut up and dribble, boy. Shut up and dribble." Well, I ain't gonna shut up and dribble because you can't love Black women and not at least talk about something like this. You can't have respect for Black women and at least stop and validate or confirm or support and respect the feelings that Black women would naturally have, about something like this. I mean, how can you feel comfortable, going out here and going to bat for somebody when you know for a fact when Sandra Bland got killed, I doubt if Stephon was one of the first people to stand up for her, right? And so I want to ask you, if you'd known Milan, Paris Milan, that's your full name, sorry about that. Miss Milan, if you'd known sort of before all this happened, just how Stephon felt about Black women, assuming these tweets are valid, and you said the account was verified and everything, right? Like it's been confirmed that it was him?
Yes.
Okay. If you'd known this in advance, how would this have affected your initial reaction to the police shooting?
I still think it's a tragedy. Like, regardless of what he said, it's tragic because it's not just about him. Like, there are other Black men who are facing a similar fate. And it doesn't negate the fact that we do have a problem in this country with racism, especially towards our Black men. So, of course, I still felt sadness because I'm like, dang, like, how many times can this happen? But then I also begin to feel like, am I stupid for supporting this man? Because again, if I was to get shot by the police, I guarantee he would probably, pee on my grave alongside his girlfriend. So, I don't think the problem is Black women speaking out. I just feel like we need to put notice on men like this, because in this country and all over the world, it's like, especially darker skinned Black women are kind of viewed as undesirable and our voices are silenced. And then people try to tell you, oh, well, you're just ugly. That's why people don't like you. And then you hear it in the music, I want a long hair, thick red bone, or I don't like dark skinned women, like what Gilbert Arenas says. And it's like, if you speak out about it, then people try to silence you. So it doesn't take away the fact that I still will support Black men who suffer police brutality. But this case in particular, I choose to not support.
Well, what's interesting is, to me, Paris is, and I know our ages are different. I'm in my 40s, you're in your 20s, but I think that's good. I think it's good, because I really want to understand what Black women are thinking at all ages, from the youngest of the young ladies to old women, you know what I mean? Because I think that we as a community, we don't listen to Black women enough. I think that we push you to, you're always sort of being asked to play the tambourine, as Chris Rock says. Remember that when he was talking about being the tambourine player in the relationship, where you're in the back and the other person is being the lead singer. And I think that it's important that we as men learn how to hear that, and that's why I think this conversation is important. Now, one thing I think that can be considered here is, and someone brought this up, is that you have to, in the case of Stephon, sort of separate what had this individual tragedy to this one guy who had his own position, his own viewpoint in terms of who he was, and et cetera, versus the bigger issue, right? The bigger issue is Black men being shot by the cops, and that's why we're protesting. So, and people have made this point. I see your comments in here. I'm just not responding to each one because I got that ADHD thing, and I'll just get all distracted. Yeah. So that point is certainly valid. But here's what's interesting, though, to your point. Most of these broader systematic movements are driven by some attachment to the individual. Like people, when they think about Trayvon Martin, they're thinking about the tragedy of a young kid who got killed before he could go live his life. When people talk about Mike Brown, I'll see people say, well, Mike Brown would have been this old now, or today is Trayvon's birthday. So they personalize it all the time. I mean, people personalize these movements. They talk Colin Kaepernick, people are attached to Colin Kaepernick, and so they support his movement against the NFL. The issue was always there, and nobody supported the issue until they supported Colin Kaepernick and connected that individual to the issue. So we can't pretend like who Stephon Clark was doesn't matter, right? It does matter. It does matter. Because let's just be real. Think about it like this. You're too young to remember this, but when O.J. Simpson's monkey ass went down over that shit with his wife Nicole, there were black people who were like, you know what? He deserves it. That's what you get, messing with all those white women. You didn't want nothing to do with no black woman. You divorced your black wife, divorced the black community, abandoned black people, went around telling people you ain't black, you're OJ, and now you want the support of the black community because they're about to string your black ass up. Right? Mm-hmm. And so I think that with Stephon, it's like we have this sympathy for him because he's dead, which we should, obviously. I mean, my God, nobody deserves to die, or very few people do, right? He certainly didn't. But then there are people that will say, well, you know what? We're looking at you sitting next to this Asian woman talking about, I mean, my God, I hope he didn't say these things, but it's been verified. I don't want nothing black but my Xbox and black bitches, this and all that. I mean, how can you have empathy for a person who says things like this about black women? I think there's sort of conflicting emotions kind of popping off here. Can you guys speak to that a little bit in terms of what's going on, inside of yourself and your viewers?
Are you asking me?
Yes, please.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, it's just like we're really conflicted because on one hand, I get a lot of black men who understand it, and a lot of black men are like, yeah, I can't co-sign this, but we are still going to support those who are affected by these racists on an everyday basis, right? But then I also get those who said, well, forget what he said, he probably was going to change when he got older. And I'm like, when you see people like, I don't know, Ben Carson, who are married to black women and they still coon, and LL Cool J, people like that, these are people that are over 40 who study it.
Right. Yeah. So, I don't rule anything out. We are doing quite a bit of experimentation on human genetics and genomes, and that type of stuff.
I'm telling you.
Yeah.
What about when the clones come? What about when they clone everybody and hook the clones up to the artificial intelligence? And then they're trying to take us over martial law with this transhumanism type thing going on.
So you got this whole, that's a good concept for a movie, man. The Walking Dead meets Terminator. They probably have done that before, but that's what you got going on over there.
I'm telling you, man, you just gotta start. Why would they not?
Yeah.
They're doing everything they can. They spend all this money on technique, and they know how to clone. It is documented. You know what I'm saying? Like, there are documents out there. It's amazing the things we laughed at, like when we first heard them 10, 15 years ago. It's like people don't really understand when they. I want to bring up something.
I actually can't hear you when you do that, JB.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you now. When you don't bang on the table, they can't hear you. Go ahead though.
It cobble before and why. All right, cool. So what I was saying was, would you wow, I lost my train of thought.
I'm sorry, man. Go ahead.
No, you did. You messed me up.
I know, man. I'm sorry. I'm just saying they couldn't hear you when you banging on the table.
I was on a roll, and you.
I know you were. I know you were. But they couldn't hear what you had to say. Unless you want to talk sign language, I'm sure you can do that too. Go ahead and act it out. You're an actor, JB.
I guess it was a catch-22.
Yeah.
Either way, either you can't hear me or I'm gonna forget what I had.
So you're talking about Terminator meets Walking Dead.
A black woman who was shot by the cops, who had said horrible things about black men, that the anti-bedwench movement, as you called it, which I know exactly what you're talking about because I see all this shit that's happening online, would have came out and said she deserved it, she's a mammy, et cetera, et cetera. What I want to throw out to you is something to consider. Mm-hmm. The guys who act like that, who are just really, really, really anti-black woman, in so many different ways. It's unfortunate because, a lot of them are part of the conscious community, which really hurts my heart, to see that. But then a lot of them also are really immature, inaccurate reflections of what a real black man looks like, right? I think that you're gonna have those guys that say those things that just are inexcusable, and it's really sad. You know, I would argue that mature black men would say, okay, this woman didn't necessarily, have the highest regard for black men because she's been traumatized or whatever, because a lot of the women that have the issues with black men is because of something that happened with their father, a boyfriend, whatever, right? Or media, all these factors come into play. But I think a lot of men, mature men, would say, but she still deserves our protection. She still deserves our support, even if she was misguided, right? Again, and so I would hope that you would also always make sure you consider those two forces, right, when you're sort of deciding how to respond, because black men ain't the same. We know that. We are not the same, and so I think maybe I'm wondering if with Stephon, if there's a way we can possibly process it like this. If we could possibly say, I'm not even telling you what we should do, I'm telling you what we could possibly do, is look at this like he was, when he made a lot of these tweets, like one of these tweets was from 2015, which means Stephon was about 19 years old when he made the tweet. 19-year-olds say a lot of dumb shit. Also, maybe look at it like, he was misguided. He was cooning. He was saying some pretty hateful things. He could have grown out of that. And maybe he just didn't know just how ridiculous he sounds at that moment. I've seen that. I've literally seen black people who had a very low regard for other black people. And then maybe after they experienced some racism or after they got some exposure to different kinds of black people, they grew out of that. Like, so is there any room to kind of write off some of it? Like, okay, now he learned the hard way that aligning himself with all these other people and, and for sort of forsaking his own community is not going to work for him. Is there a way to kind of have a little bit of forgiveness for the fact that it sounds like maybe he was a little young and ignorant? What do you think about
that? No. I mean, I wish I could be as mature and view it that way, but no, he doesn't get a pass. He at that time he was a father, so that brings a whole different level for some men of maturity and awareness of what's going on. And he just consistently made the same comments. I get people are young and dumb and make mistakes, but what he said was so profound and so deep, and like the knowledge that he had with the erasure that he wanted of his blackness, again, going back to the whole Vietnamese and Indian thing, it's like you were so aware of what you were saying, and maybe he didn't think it would get on this public platform. I'm sure the police officers didn't even care to see his tweets, but he still said it. And like I was saying with, the Ben Carsons of the world and the LL Cool J's, these men are in their 40s, and I'm sure they developed their way of thinking of self way when they were younger and they never grew out of that, or even Jesse Lee Peterson. So, it's a lot of them out here who say these things when they are younger and they carry on that same mentality when they're older. So, some people might be able to look past it, and I don't knock those people, but me personally, no.
Okay. Well, no, it's fine. I think it's okay to have a perspective. I'm just throwing ideas out there for us to process, right? So, another thought that I had was this. I'm wondering if there's a way to look at, Stephon Clark and his unfortunate words. Now, forget his girlfriend, because I'm gonna say this. Here's where Boyce, the human being, steps in. My thought is, okay, now that your black ass done got shot, is the Asian community stepping out there to rally and support you? No, they're not, right? So you're running off talking about, I want to have these cute little Asian kids, whatever you think that they are. And now the fact is their community isn't going to go to the front lines for you. It was the black community that went to the front lines for you, despite the fact that you didn't seem to have anything positive to say about black people. I think that's honestly my first reaction on that. But also,
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but she didn't even go to his funeral.
What?
She didn't go to his funeral.
Why wasn't she at the funeral?
White bees get cheese is what she said. So I don't know.
She said white bees get cheese.
Yeah, she said she doesn't like black bees. White bees get cheese. All these problematic comments, but continue. I'm sorry to interrupt, but continue.
No. Okay, white bees get cheese. All right. Good to know. Okay, so so what about this? What about this thought? What can you say? And this is something I do actually believe as well, and I think this is a perspective to consider, because I'm not here to tell anybody what to think. Y'all can have whatever opinion you want. With intellectual chocolates about stimulating your thinking. What about this idea that okay, let's say we decide that Stephon Clark was a piece of shit, that he didn't respect black women, he was a self-hating Negro. He's somebody that we can't be proud of as a human being. We know, though, despite all of that, that he didn't deserve to be killed, right? He was a bad person who got shot. Nobody deserves to get shot just because they're not a nice guy, right? Can we find that to be enough reason to protest in terms of saying, look, the police they're out shooting people, and we can't act like it's justified just because we didn't like the person you shot, right? Because is there still room to protest, sort of just on that circumstance, as opposed to simply abandoning him and abandoning the issue because what he said was a bunch of bullshit?
Yeah, I personally think that, protesting is a little bit antiquated. I don't feel like it's really having any real benefit, and it's not really materializing into any justice. I think you can abandon him without abandoning the issue. And the issue is Black men are being shot at alarming rates unjustifiably by police. And there are so many other cases like this that go on that we can campaign for. I don't think protesting is going to make much of a difference because this has been happening for how long and nobody's really receiving justice. So again, I personally think you can distance yourself from himself, but you can still look at the larger picture of, our men are being targeted, our men, women, and children are being targeted at this point.
Okay, so you're not going to abandon the cause just because of what he said. It's more so a matter of expressing legitimate concern for what he said before he died about Black women. And so how does this change things going forward? Like, so when you're talking to your sisters and you're doing your stuff on Fly Nubian Queen and stuff like that, how does that change, your rhetoric? Like, I mean, does this mean like, I'm not even going to bring it up anymore? Or does it mean we're going to bring it up and just separate him from all of this? We have no sympathy for him, but we have sympathy for our brothers that support us. Like, is there space to separate the two? So that Black men, like if Boyce Watkins gets shot out here in the street, I don't want people to say, well, he's just one of those Black men that hates Black women, because I work hard not to be in that category. My mama would get mad at me if I was in that category. So is there kind of room to still talk about it without necessarily getting as caught up in who he was as a person, or kind of letting all that kind of be a different conversation? What do you think?
Yeah, I definitely think that you can be able to separate, because again, like, it kind of seems a little bit suspect that these tweets would come out around this time, and it could have had a little bit of white supremacy, involvement into it. But I think that majority of the time when we hear this, we're all sad. We don't really care about the person's background in general. I feel like this is a special case to where it made us actually like really, really look at the person and look at the mindset that they had. And for example, like you said, if you were to get shot, I'm sure there would be some people that would be like, oh, well, F Boyce, whatever. He think he know it all about the stocks, and he think he's so cute, or whatever. Like, people would say stuff like that. But in general, I think in a general sense, we all would feel sympathy for you, and we all would be supporting you. So this is just kind of like one of those rare cases that we couldn't ignore his past and his views. And I know you said, his girlfriend doesn't matter, but to me, this woman is going to be a recipient of a lot of money. Her kids are going to come into a lot of money. How the freak is that going to help us Black people? She might marry an Asian man, and they might start a Vietnamese restaurant, or might start whatever sort of restaurant. And that's not going to funnel back into our community. So to me, it's kind of also about the resource aspect as well, which is why I'm not supporting.
Okay. Well, you know what? I respect that. And I think, and I'm glad you brought that to my attention. I didn't know that he said those things about Black women. And the reason I asked you, if you could have this conversation with me on the air, and I'm glad you accepted, thank you, is because, I don't care what anybody says. Like, no, this is, like some people would say, oh, well, don't talk about it because it's going to undermine what's going on. No. We need to, talk about this and lay it out here and figure it out, because it has to be a two-way street. I think that, and the interesting thing is that, it's not out of the question that part of the reason that Stephon might have abandoned Black women is because either he was mentored by somebody who was abandoned by Black women, or disrespected or hurt by Black women, or he felt himself rejected. You never know, right? Just like I see Black women who hate Black men because they've been hurt by Black men, right? Yeah. And so ultimately, I think that just having these conversations is really important, so we can say, okay, let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater. you know, let's sort of talk about it, but then let's still figure out how, you know, the next time something like this happens, because you know it's going to happen. It happens every week. You know, we can still work together and show mutual respect. Because what we don't want is like that chaos and nonsense that you had, where you had I forgot who it was. This a lady that wrote a prominent article where she said, "I'm not going to support Eric Garner because black men don't support me." You know, and I'm like, well, no, there's a lot of black men that will support you. The black men you know don't support you, and those men are a problem too, right?
Right.
So I appreciate the fact that you're able to have this discussion. I'll let you get the last word before we pop out. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, you know, again, I don't want people to think that this is an anti-black man bashing campaign or anything like that. It's just Black women have been silenced for so long, mainly by white men, more than some Black women who hate Black men like to admit, but we've mainly been silenced by white men. So it's a bit disheartening when you get that same, you know, silence from your own men some of the time. And this is one of those cases to where it's like, you know, for many years we have been disrespected by some of our own men and by racist white men. And we haven't been able to vocalize this without, you know, people deflecting and denying it and gaslighting your experience. So this is one of those situations to where, yes, we are admitting this is a major, major problem, and Black women are doing themselves a disservice by ignoring it and saying, well, you know, F all Black men. That's not the solution. I think the solution is to distance yourself from those who think like a Stephon Clark and go hard for the ones out here like a Eric Garner or, you know, a Kai Gurley, Freddie Gray. You know, we need to support those men with every fiber of our being so that we can try to help our community get back onto the road of recovery, but we can't do it alone without Black men. Cutting off all Black men is not the case, because then you're making yourself and your children an open target to racist white supremacists. So I thank you for having me. Make sure you guys go subscribe to the Fly Nubian Queen Network for melanated women like you.
Yeah, so flynubianqueen.com. That's the URL, flynubianqueen.com. And the last parting thought I'll share with everybody is that you got to remember, Harriet Tubman had to shoot a lot of slaves, or pull her gun out on a lot of slaves because she was trying to free the ones that wanted to be free. But just because somebody isn't ready, you know, to grow as, you know, as a Black person, or isn't ready for freedom or whatever it is that we're seeking, that doesn't mean that they're a lost cause. Some people have to go through certain experiences to get there. You know, I had to go through certain experiences before I understood what it was, you know. And so, you know, Stephon Clark, I've known people like that, and I've seen that transformation. I don't know if Stephon would have gone through it, but I would be willing to bet you that being shot 8 times by the cops, at the very least changed his perspective until he died, right? It at least changed his perspective on what it means to be Black in America, right? Like, you know, maybe it didn't change who he was, but he died, of course, but he didn't die quickly. He died slowly, you know, but, you know, I would be willing to bet you that in his last moments, he was sitting there thinking, you know, what the fuck? You know, this is being Black is a lot tougher than I thought. These white police really hate me more than I thought. He just isn't around to say that, right? So I've seen that. I've seen people where they started off, you know, cooning to the 9th degree and went through some shit. You know, they got fired, got laid off from the job, or they thought they were the office pet, or, you know, or got disrespected by, you know, by some white colleagues, or had an interaction with the cops. Next thing you know, they're straight militant Black power, assalamu alaikum, you know, and they're like, boys, let me tell you what these white people are doing to me. And I'm like, yeah, I tried to tell you, dumbass, 3 years ago, but you wrote me off as a crazy radical Black man. So I think that, so what I found is that leaving room for people like that is a good way to go, so that when they finally do come around, that, you know, they're not feeling rejected, you know, like, so when I see somebody like that, where I see them have, you know, evolved from what they were 5 years ago to what they are now, I say, okay, well, now that you're ready, let me educate you on a little bit more so we can work together, right? So I don't think that necessarily all the Stephon Clarks are a lost cause. There are some Stephons out there that are talking this crazy shit right now, but they're going to go through some stuff. They're going to lose a couple of jobs, get pulled over a couple times, go through some bad relationships with white women, and then they're going to be ready for, you know, to evolve as people, you know, because white supremacy does a number on everybody. We know that. All right. So thank you very much, Paris.
Thank you.
It was real. And thank you guys for hanging out with us. And don't forget, Dr. Claude Anderson and I are going to be in Chicago and St. Louis this month. So if you want to know more about that, you can go to drboycechicago.com, drboycestlouis.com, drboycedallas.com. We'll be in all those 3 cities. And that's pretty much it. So don't forget to hit the like button, share button, subscribe button before we get out of here. And thank you again to my guest, Paris Milan at flynubianqueen.com. And also she's all over YouTube. So check her out. So you guys take care and stay black, and we'll see you guys soon. Be good.